evening, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to those of you joining in person and those of you joining us online. I am Rebecca Majeski. I'm our coordinator of creative writing programs here at NSU, and it's my pleasure to introduce Allison Pelegrin, our Louisiana State Poet Laureate. I'll share a more formal introduction, but briefly first I'll share a little bit about the day we had. Allison has been generous joining a couple of our classes here, 2 of our poetry classes here at Northwestern State, having conversations with our student writers, answering questions about what it is to be a poet, talking about everything ranging from pulp fiction to imposter syndrome to all the really important work she does with our incarcerated populations. So I'm excited to have her here, excited to see you all here to join us. Afterward, if you please stay, we'll have a question and answer session, and I believe Pelegrin also has some books available if you're interested in purchasing. Governor John Bell Edwards named Pelegrin Poet Laureate of Louisiana in 2023. He wrote, "The Poet Laureate acts as Louisiana's literary ambassador, and Allison's long record of teaching, sharing, and producing poetry that engages readers makes her a perfect fit as the preeminent poet of our state. Her work is both beautifully crafted and appeals to a broad range of readers, and it will undoubtedly help elevate poetry in the public consciousness." A Covington resident, Pelegrin is writer-in-residence at Southeastern Louisiana University, where she has taught for 20 years. She is the author of several poetry collections, including Our Lady of Bewilderment, Waterlines, Hurricane Party, and Big Muddy River of Stars, which was the winner of the 2006 Akron Poetry Prize. Her chapbook, Our Lady of the Flood, won the Diode 2018 Chapbook Prize and an Eric Hoffer Award. Pelegrin is the recipient of a Literature Fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts and an Atlas Grant from the Louisiana Board of Regents. Her work has appeared in Bennington Review, the Southern Review, Ninth Letter, and as printable broadsides at Broadsided. She received her Bachelor of Arts and Master of Arts in English from Southeastern Louisiana University and a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from the University of Arkansas. This event tonight is sponsored by NSU's Department of English, Languages, and Cultural Studies, the Louisiana Folklife Center, and the Office of Inclusion and Diversity. I also want to thank the folks who helped fund this, the Louisiana Endowment for the Humanities, the state affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities. So thank you again to everyone who made tonight possible. Please stay afterwards for a Q&A, but now it's time to please welcome Allison Pelegrin.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that introduction and for making today so welcome and fun. And thank you, Shane, for organizing this event and getting such a nice venue with these beautiful, are they chandeliers? We can't decide. Or light fixtures, but they're great. I'm happy to be here in Natchitoches doing the Poet Laureate thing. There's nothing better to me than to spend the whole day talking about poetry. So I'll read some poems and then I'll be happy to talk with you about my Lifelines poetry project, that'll give me a chance to tell you everything you want to know about the work I've been doing to bring poetry into prisons so that incarcerated people can write and share their words with people who are writing on the same prompts in different community settings. It's been really great, and it's a lot of fun too. Since we just had a hurricane where I'm from, I guess I have to start with a hurricane poem. This is Praying with Strangers. Wish I could be funny again, like the old me, with a wild child with food and music on the mind, because I am worn out with bringing nothing but needs to the hands of the Lord. Beginning that day, I packed the kids in the car for a head start against the hurricane. 5 hours north to the nearest hotel room, tears the whole way, like we knew what was coming, like we were going to be the ones prying apart the automatic doors of the Winn-Dixie to float out unfrozen, frozen food. Oh, refugees, oh, my stranded sisters and brothers, we never looked away from the television set, our campfire. We ate out until the money ran out, then choked down charity. Peanut butter, peanut butter, peanut butter bread. I swam in the hotel pool, drawling reminiscences in the company of peers. anything to keep my head above water in the Bible Belt, where they don't sell beer on Sundays. Belly aching, praying with strangers, it became my life's work. Didn't want the job, but there I was, scratching out words, taking notes, while my children, their foot soles filthy black, played rescue helicopter with their army men on the rooftop of the unmade bed. One time when I was a kid, after a flood, I was having some sort of asthma attack and I had to get to the hospital, but you couldn't get to the hospital because the streets were flooded. And so they came to get me in a pirogue and brought me up to the hospital door. It was the Cajun Navy that saved me. And so I probably owe them a big thanks for being here tonight. This is called Feast of the Cajun Navy. My head's so crowded with giggles and snark, I'm called irreverent, mistaken for drunk because I'm goofy after one Bloody Mary on Mardi Gras, or at the roller derby running of the bulls. Feast day, every day. I'm ready to take to the streets, parade behind coffins or icons made of corn. What can I feast today? How can I praise the Cajun Navy, my patron saints? Rescue boaters cruising flooded streets who sweet talk the distressed from drowned cars and rooftops. They came for me once, got me to the hospital in time for a breathing treatment. I rest easy knowing somebody with a boat has my back. Hallelujah. And so I saw some people from the morning class, or the 12:30 class I was in today, I think were in here. Okay. And I was talking about the Crown of Sonnets that I spent months writing and then I threw most of it away. That was from that poem. So, oh, there you are. So that's one from that statement. Okay. In case you, I know you're probably pondering on that all day. So there you have it. When you're a kid, well, I'm finding out, when I was a child, I always got so excited over hurricanes because there would be no school for sure. And we got to play around and eat food out of a can, which was awesome. You know, all these things that seem terrible as an adult, but as a kid, they're really fun. But now last week we're out of school for a hurricane, and I was lucky enough not to be impacted, except for the fact that I was just at home chilling out, having a great time, reading all day. It was awesome. So I guess I still like hurricanes. They make me happy. They bring back happy memories. Here's one, which I lost the page. I always do this. There's these two poems I wrote that are similar, and I mix them up. And then I always have to do that thing where I flip to the table of contents to figure out what it is. So the poem I'm going to read to you is called Flood Subject. And I told students today that I like to steal. This is a title I stole straight from Emily Dickinson's letters, which I highly recommend. They're weird and wild, just like her poems. Flood Subject. I'm partial to the lesser saints, doers like my mom, a mystic of tropical storms, making a game of disaster, making it safe for us to nap in hammocks under the carport, a marvel of calm. And when her crisis strength kicked in, able to lift the living room set up on cinder blocks, how many times have I waded in floodwaters sheen with oil, or put my faith in sandbags and the altar she erected in haste on the coffee table. Flashlights, a radio, a deck of cards, hurricane candles housing gaudy saints. Other than illumination, no real power. I always read this poem about my dad, who's long gone, but I wish he was here to share in all the success I've had later in my life. I also really wanted to use the word larped in a poem. Do you all know that? Oh, everyone knows that word.
I know what
Live action. What's that?
I know what lopping is.
Okay. So I used it in the poem, and I'm so glad I finally found the audience that knows what I'm talking about. I wonder if this audience also understands the reference to my favorite store, which is defunct, Wicks and Sticks. Anybody? The candlestick? Yes. If you ever needed a candle shaped like Buddha, you would go to Wicks and Sticks, and there it would be. The best store in the world. So there we have it. This poem is called Sucker. I was a sucker for my daddy, an addict at heart, always hooked on something. Drambuie, the cabbage soup diet, Cajun dancing, hauling Yankees on the tour bus up and down River Road to Ogle whitewash plantations. He once larked the vampire was stacked, rising from the grave, because he was a sucker for Anne Rice. He was a sucker for Wicks and Sticks, specifically candles shaped like Buddha, and apartment living after his divorces. He went hook, line, and sinker for self-help, especially Dianetics. And though his toenails blackened, he ran across the longest bridge in the world, twice. Then he took up ballroom dancing. He was the world's best drunk, and after he dried out, he was a sucker for AA. He was a sucker for fathering offshoremen bailed from the drunk tank, for naming these chain-smoking men my uncles, the women my aunts. Life became a potluck of talking through the night while the kids slept in cars. Except for me. I was a sucker for sitting under the fig tree behind the Camel Club, thinking no one could see me study him, golden-haired and calm, everyone's father but mine. A sucker for calm, for burnt coffee and all-nighters, for not looking away when sobriety's atoms named the worst horrors of their lives. Further proving that I steal in my poems all the time. This is a poem that steals from Basho, and I'm totally confident he'll be fine with it. And I'll tell you his poem that I stole in a minute, but more about me first. I grew up on the west bank of New Orleans in Gretna, and I felt like I could never go through a day in my life without somebody reminding me that I lived on the worst bank, and I talked like a yap or whatever. So I always felt that I was supposed to act like I was ashamed of it, but I thought it was cool. There was a canal across the street, and there were alligator guards in there and all kinds of stuff. I mean, I thought I had the best place in the world, until one day these kids I went to school with, mean kids, were dropping me off after a slumber party, and the next day at school I heard them saying, "Oh, she lives in one of those neighborhoods where all of the houses are like." And I don't know if they said it in cruelty, but it just pointed out something to me that I didn't know. I thought my house was amazing. But anyway, I guess it wasn't to them, but to me, what? So the poem I robbed of Basho is a favorite poem of mine, and it goes like this. Even in Kyoto, hearing the cuckoo cry, I long for Kyoto. Which is just, I don't know, it's probably a perfect poem. And that's one I know I'm always thinking about in my brain, so I'll sometimes say that one in prison too. And I was recently informed by a writer inside of a prison the perfect description of this poem. He said, "Oh, it's like being homesick, but you're home already." And I thought that was, yes, that's exactly what it is, okay? So anyway, this poem makes everybody think, not just me. And the title of my poem is, Even in Gretna, Hearing the Cashier Talk, I Long for Gretna. Coasting into my old world to help Mom pack up the house she can't sell for nothing, rimmed as it is with trash and canals threatening to overflow. I get a taste for the red drink of my youth. And when the cashier at the gas station lets slip the drawl of my people, most of them scattered elsewhere or to the grave, I could sob. Peacock talk, purposely showy and slow. Anytime I'd hit the twang, Mom got angry because I was letting my Gretna show. She threatened a face slap or a taste of soap, and I circled on a red bike just out of reach. In one of the classes I visited today, I was talking about how we can use phrases that people are throwing around all the time. We can kind of reuse those in poetry. And I'm kind of doing that in this poem. And my inspiration was a phrase that I had on a patch that was on a sandbag, you know, like a weighted sandbag. And the patch is just Winnie the Pooh skipping around, and it says "zero bothers given," which is, you know, the Winnie the Pooh way of saying something else. And I just thought it was so funny. It's really not that funny, but to me, it's hilarious. And so naturally, I had to write a poem called "Zero Bothers Given." At last, I have reached the perfect age, which is my tramp stamp needs a footnote years old. I have circled back, entering a sort of informed childhood, place where I can let my fat overflow and wear running shoes with dresses while relishing my newest moniker. Not MILF, but woman of a certain age. Woman abandoned by decorum who voices beliefs and pet peeves so deeply tamped down their release is almost sexual. All lapdogs get on my nerves. Today's students whine too much. And to hell with high fantasy, The Hobbit most of all. I can finally say to the mystic crew of mansplainers and the flag-happy truckers in this Malone Bay wonderland, nobody's treading on you, sweetie. And even though putting it in a poem is barely saying it at all, I feel brave and sort of emboldened, and I wish I had started sooner so there might be a spot for me in the Zero Bothers Hall of Fame, alongside that woman at Walmart who caged her own fit-pitching child with an inverted shopping cart. Chaucer knew the sensation of yodeling down the mountain on the shorter side of days. The life so short, the craft so long to learn. Let the world be what it is, a dumpster fire where robots write the poems. As for me, moody grandam of fickle tastes, I demand that my chain letter to the world be forwarded to as many people as possible before it self-destructs. Before I do, I'm cranky already, stitching crosswords in silk, shimmering proof of my ill will. It won't take much, a pinprick would do it, to send me over the edge. Thank you.
I felt like clapping after every poem.
Well, so
I
the
think I
rules,
think brothers too.
I can pause and explain the rules, see.
That's
So
always
if
great.
you clap for one, which is awesome, but now in my brain, my imposter syndrome brain that we talked about today, I think I've already read 6 other poems and they didn't clap. Should I burn all of those pages? So, but I thank you for that. But I'm not asking you to applaud for every poem. You can just clap at the end, or not. Which would be really bad. This is called "And in This Way the World Passed Me by. Before I start reading, I'll tell you where I got this idea from. When my great-grandmother turned 90, many, many, many years ago, my aunts and uncles had this big party celebrating that, and one of the things they decided we were going to do was all have family portraits taken. And they decided we were going to have these family portraits taken in their bedroom. Which is weird. Like the bed wasn't in the picture, it just seemed weird. They had a little risen area, I guess that was a sitting area, and so we could have 2 layers of people in these family portraits. And I just look at myself in those pictures and I'm just thinking, who are any of these people, myself included? It was just, I don't know, it was weird to look back at them. Because I remember the moment, but when I look at it now, it doesn't look like what I remembered. Does that make sense? I don't know if there's a word for that. And in this way, the world passed me by. I am the one who flipped through all these books, dog-earing pages, so it's appropriate to refer to me as old soul, or at the very least, ageless and wise, even though I obeyed the uncles who sent me hunting for the tail end of a mountain buck they said was on the other side of the wall. In yellowed snapshots, I stand out in the family lineup for my halter tops, and the look on my face, which is that of one who hears the ocean churn without a seashell in sight. Places I have never been or where I think I was born, full grown, but with something to learn each time floodwaters wipe clean the slate. I haven't written many prison poems because I'm committed to only telling my story, not other people's stories. But this is a prison poem, and it tells my story. And the focus of the story is the feeling where you think, what in the world am I doing here? What do I have to offer? Who do I think I am? Which is kind of, I guess, my daily meditation. So this is called a collect at the prison gate, which is like a daily prayer, if you go through the Book of Common Prayer. So I guess I wrote one to add in there. God of wind that passes through razor wire and its glinting thorns, everyone watches in this concrete cathedral, so where are you? The lookout tower? Roadside dip where a killdeer made its nest? A half pencil shapes these words of redemption and its strange ways. Help me to deliver, though I arrive empty-handed and possibly for no one's sake, with a car key in my pocket and a pale stripe where my watch should sit. My friend Marianne is listening, and she's read that poem, but that's the first time I read it in public. So I have, like all poets, I guess, I have weird things that interest me. And one of the things that interests me is tattoos, but specifically, all tattoos, bad and regrettable tattoos in particular, because they're just never ending. I have a buddy of my husband's is a tattoo artist, and it's just so funny to hear what people ask for. We make them write it down. Is that's it? Okay. It's going on. So that's always something really entertaining to me, to just see tattoos. And they even have shows where they show people getting their tattoos covered up, like something better. Misspellings on tattoos. I'm an English teacher, right? So it's bad enough to see it in a post or in a headline, much less on a tattoo, which is permanent. But they're always misspelled, aren't they? And anyway, this poem, it's called Our Lady of No Regrets, and it's misspelled, as that word always is in tattoo land. It hits a little bit differently because now I have a son who is a grown man, and his body is slowly getting covered with these tattoos that he's accumulating. And I'm like, I love my mom. Where's that? Anyway. So I'm going to have to write a follow-up to this poem, is what I'm going to have to do. But I have to decide how I feel about his little baby skin. So this is Our Lady of No Regrets. Our Lady of No Regrets, prevention of bad tattoos must be your side hustle, a part-time ministry. With respect, Queen of Inky Heaven, a few too many permanent atrocities have escaped your intervention. Just when it seems the world of ink has collected its wits, another troll with armpit hair is born, or a Patrick Swayze centaur in a rainbow piece. So many RIPs, so many's mama's boys, so many portraits of you take liberties, from reverent to sexy but still chaste, to Dia de los Muertos, Mary. Rainbow Cupid with a fleshed out skull, lifted up her gown lifted up, revealing pistols on juicy, half-spread thighs. Are you angry to have been made slutty, sweet lady? What's better, to be forgotten or to mingle on the flash art wall among vixens with spade-tipped tails? Mother to so many bad-inked guys and dolls, how do you stay calm? My mother wept over my tattoo, a fish in multicolored flames swimming up my back. Bad ink claims nothing lasts forever. Except, of course, YOLO, spelled in penises. A jigsaw puzzle face, and sorry mom stamped across the knuckles of two fists. But what about a mother's grief over children delivered with no guarantees? They are born, they whine, they steal change from your purse. They pierce their ears and brand themselves with ice. No blank space on their baby skin to mark with kisses. Only scribbles, other people's names inside of hearts. Some of the people I met today were talking about how they were thinking back to childhood and things that happened to them, and they were trying to formulate those experiences into a book of poems, and good luck with that. And one thing I meant to say in class, which I forgot because I was so interested in what everyone else was saying, is that there's a name for that in literature. It's a fancy German name called Bildungsroman. So if people say, you're writing a poem, blah, 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 about your childhood, don't say that. Just say it's part of a series of Bildungsroman in the tradition of Goethe or something. And they'll be like, oh, okay. So you can just say that, and it means coming of age. And so I wanted to sound smart, so that's what I titled this poem, Bildungsroman. Awake, asleep. I don't know what I was in childhood, feeling things deeply or not at all. It was a bad time for secrets. Kudzu laid hands but failed to cleanse me of the cruelties I exacted and received. When I asked to ride a horse on my birthday, I did not mean tracing circles on an invisible lead. I wanted my steed mean-spirited and wild, scattering clamshells up the levee to race cargo ships and the rust-bottom barges shouldered above my head by the Mississippi. How can it be so easy to force water to change its shape? The mean girls next door called through the fence, begging for me to join them in the pool. As quick as I could scuff down the driveway, I was there, fumbling with the locked gate while they laughed. Likewise, I followed my brother to the skate ramp, well aware a broomstick was coming for the spokes of my bike. I remember braiding a ribbon in my ever-damp ponytail for the occasion, and afterward recording the long, sad tale in my diary, which I hid in plain sight. I guess this also is in a Bildungsroman, but it's called Apology. Isn't this the band dorm? I wasn't in band in college, but I was in band in high school. I played the trumpet.
I think this is the ball. This is the ball.
The ballroom of the band building? Okay. I'm sorry?
Creative performing arts.
Okay. So there's got to be some trumpet player wandering the halls in this building somewhere. That's what I was. And it was fun to play your parade in Mardi Gras because you get to go to all the Mardi Gras parades and see people being out of control. I should confess here that I went to an all-girls school, and when you think of the cool drum line and all the amazing bands, that's not what we sounded like. We were led by nuns, and we played a medley of the songs from South Pacific. I wanted to be in the St. Mary's band, not the St. Mary's Dominican band, which is the one I was in. But I still liked it. Apology. Why did I pretend to hate bunking at Rosaryville for band camp? I should say Rosaryville was a convent for nuns. My fixation on whitewashed Jesus in a sister cemetery was uncool. I pretended to choose that path so I could sneak cigarettes and conjure my pranks in peace. My grandfather taught me to rub a bar of soap over my double-socked toes. Thanks to that hack, I could march forever in my majorette boots. He also trained me in Marine Corps hijinks. It was my pleasure to muffle a trumpet solo, to hop out to nothing, there ain't nothing like a dame. We actually played that in a parade. I mean, can you, it's just making it the worst band in the world. It was my pleasure to muffle a trumpet solo, to hop out of step on purpose and keep it up for miles just to see the sisters scowl. I loved Mardi Gras, the parades, mammoth breasts painted with faces, the crowd adorning me and my horn with beads that looked like fun-loving rosaries. When I made up things to tell the priest they sent in to hear confessions, more than the lies, my intent was to make him feel useful. I was clueless then, and only a few years removed from having tangible regrets, like that night in a honky-tonk when I struck a match on my zipper to keep a creep at bay. I knew my plan backfired when he leaned in and whispered, "Hot pants." These days, drink in hand, I boogie when the marching bands pass. I don't know exactly what I'm sorry for, but it's bothered me my whole life. It's a room clearing poem. It's a room clearing kind of poem. The bar where that happened, I actually pass it when I'm on the way to visit one of the prisons that I go to. And I think, oh, that was the place. Hot pants.
Hot pants.
Hot pants. Here comes hot pants. With a trunk load of books. Okay. In this poem, I am ripping off Aesop and also Philip Larkin, famous grump, but I love him. This is called Day Drinking at the End of Days. Everything is on fire, but I feel about average, thanks to the Larkin plan, which is to work all day and get half drunk at night. This is how I wrote my books and raised my kids and rebuilt after Katrina, the first hurricane to leave a permanent mark. Part of me will always be exiled in a hotel room, wanting to stab in the eye anyone who says, I wonder if they should rebuild. But there is a case to be made. Why rinse cans for recycling that winds up at the dump? Not to mention the kids I birthed into this hot mess of a red state. No amount of green or bayou fog can ever make up for it. There are literal pilots dive-bombing pesticides. Not to mention the open secret malicious stonemason who made a house call to say he has our back. This was pre-insurrection, so I thought he was being friendly, despite the moat of mean dogs patrolling his compound. But now I wonder if it was a sign, as when a cardinal slammed into my car, his soul released in an upward blast, a feathered bomb. Is the crimson bird prophetic, a heart beating outside of my body? Is it time to tie off loose ends, to enter deeper into, or to wake from my rot gut buzz, so that I might sing as I walk into the fire? I'm getting tired of confessions, so this poem would be a pop quiz. And when I read a title, maybe you can tell me where I took it from. Okay. This doesn't really need an explanation. As I stand on a paddleboard for the first time in June, I plan for October's eclipse. It starts with a James and ends with a right. As I step
James White.
Yes. Very good. Anyway. So there we go. The whole poem is summarized in that title. As I stand on the paddleboard for the first time in June, I plan for October's eclipse. Knowing full well the folly of counting on tomorrow, I resolve to be on Bayou Castine for the eclipse coming in 100 days. I've got solar glasses and a flashlight to wear around my neck, and I'll pack a flask. Because if you're not reading boat names and sipping bourbon on the bayou during a solar eclipse, why even bother? But now it is summer, and I live for darkness where it is cooler, roaming the yard in board shorts and Crocs. How do I, who barely have my balance, dare dream of gliding among cypress, stoic, and black waters? Tonight's crickets salute the thunder moon. Those that will sing their confusion to the future have just taken root. And I will end with this poem so that we have time for questions. It's called Feast with a Mouthful of Bees. I was doomsday's daughter, ignoring the hum of everyday, ungilded, twitching things. Ecstatic, enraged, brimming with questions and lies, I stumbled through violent and ordinary times with a drink in each hand, my head crowded with cusses and snark and the sound of me screaming underwater. Razor days. I'd rather cough up fish hooks than try to understand. Long list of harms with wonders mixed in. Can it be enough? The words sting, bees on my tongue. I vibrate from the inside out. I call on strangers to testify that sometimes I weep for no reason. That clover fills my footsteps as foretold. Thank you.
So we'd love to open it up to questions, and I'll start with one, if that's okay. I loved that you talked in the 12:30 class about using humor, and that sometimes when you're drafting, you're enjoying, like laughing to yourself as those lines come. And I wanted to ask about humor in poetry. You know, a lot of folks like to compare poets and comedians. We both observe things, make connections, associations, you know, shine a lens back on who and how we are. But how do you think about humor's role in poetry? Does poetry allow for different ways to play with humor? And why don't more poets write funny things?
I have to say also, sometimes I'm laughing at stuff I think is funny in my poems, and then I read it out to an audience and no one's laughing. So maybe it's not as funny as I think. But I mean, there's a lot of reasons that humor exists or can work in a piece of art. And one is it lets you say things you maybe wouldn't be able to do otherwise. You know, if I, especially in a poem that's maybe getting a little political or something, if I can make it funny or make it feel like a jab instead of a stab or an attack, I can get in and make my point a little bit quicker because we're all laughing. Even though I was laughing at you or the neighbor I was talking about in the home. You know, so it seems a little bit that way. And also, I don't know about you all, but sometimes humor is a self-defense mechanism as well. And you turn something in a joke or do a lot of song and dance, or if you can laugh about it, then you're not crying about it maybe. So it can sometimes be a defense mechanism. I would say I don't sit down and say, okay, today is Tuesday and I'm feeling funny, so funny poem it is. I mean, as with any poem, I think you have to let the subject dictate the direction it's going to go, the form that it's going to have, and the shape it's going to take. But I'm just really open to that. And I would never shut something out because it wasn't serious and the subject enough. I would never do that to me. And I know I'm not alone in this. If someone would ever just say, oh, you can't write poems about that, that doesn't belong in poetry, that is just inviting me to write an entire book on that forbidden subject. which I would do for spite.
Questions? Yes.
Any thoughts on any local historical writers or artists here? Melrose, Kate Chopin?
Well, I love Kate Chopin, but reading her makes me cry. And we have a local author in the room who's been a great mentor to me, who is Julie King. If anybody wants to buy a book, you'll be buying my poems and her words on the back of some of them. I'm recommending them. But Julie is actually another poet too who uses humor. A little snarky. We look so ladylike, but then you just let loose these darts and you can really be precise. It was
Another question.
Yes.
How has online teaching affected higher education from your perspective?
It makes it less fun for me because I like doing the song and dance part of teaching. And I like being able to read the room. Imagine being a stand-up comic and trying to deliver your routine and it's just black faces on the screen, just squares of emptiness. That's not very good to me. And I know that when I was a student, I loved my professors, even if I was afraid of them or thought they were mean or whatever. I just loved being in a lecture space, hearing them talk about, even if it was chemistry, it was very interesting. I wasn't good at it, but I was interested. And so I think we have to work so much harder to have something like that happen in an online environment.
The good and the bad of it?
I'm sorry?
The good and the bad of the online part of education or higher education?
I didn't say good. I mean, I guess it's good in the sense that it's convenient for some, but I don't think it is a substitute for face-to-face interaction, though I recognize that's where we are going. I mean, I'm not in charge.
It's horrible.
Has it done to universities with Wall Street on Main Street?
I'm sorry?
Has it done to universities with Wall Street, with Walmart has done to Main Street in small towns?
No. I don't think so. But I do know that even being on a college campus, just moving around, walking among your peers, going to eat in the cafeteria, if you're not going to class and you're only watching it on your computer, you're not doing part of what happens inside of college.
Do you have a question over here?
Could you speak to your process, your writing process? Do you set aside a particular time every day and stick to that discipline, or does it take some other format for you?
I am not a daily writer. I mean, sometimes I might be, but that's just not how my life is structured. So I am in camp when a poem is coming, everything else gets dropped. I could be on my way to some big meeting or whatever, and guess what? I'm going to be late because I'm writing the poem. I'm just writing it right there. I'm not as cool as all you people that do it on the voice notes app. Okay, I just write on a tablet in my car. So it'll be, I'm like, what was I thinking about? But I can get the string of it from there and kind of take it. And then once I get a draft down, I kind of work obsessively. I go through a lot of drafts and I rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it because for me, I want my poems to sound like spontaneous and almost just similar to just regular, ordinary conversational speech, but I'm really intentional with the words and the sound and the rhythm, and so it just takes a long time to execute that for me.
So then, do you keep a notebook with you and you longhand for the most part, just whenever?
Yeah. I always have a purse that's big enough to put a notebook in it, so that's one rule that I have. But then also there's that thing that happens, which is wherever you are, it's the 1 second you're without the notebook, so I'm writing it on the napkin or whatever. But generally it would start in the notebook. If I start typing a draft of a poem, because it's typed, it feels finished, and I don't like to do that until later in the process. But whatever works for you, that's what you should do.
I have a question for some of my 2110 intro students here this evening, and I talked to them about poetry, because some of you go to my class, they're in because they have to be, and they hate poetry. Although we know that's not true, right? And I love it. However, can you talk to them about this idea of how so many times in high school we look at poetry as something like we're taught, oh, well, if you didn't get it, you're dumb, or you're not wiser than at this point, so you must have done it wrong. So as a poet, can you just speak to
Yeah, this is so easy, and we're all gonna love poetry in about 2 minutes, okay? All right. Poetry is not a math problem. There's no book that you flip in the back and it's got the answers to ode on a Grecian urn. That's not how it works. A poet or a poem is asking you to make an emotional connection with language. That's it. So when you all are in here, hear me do my song and dance and you chuckle, guess what? You just heard a poem that you understood and you got it, and it affected you. I'm not going to say you're going to get it tattooed on your forehead, but you interacted with it, you got it. That's it. That's all it is. And I mean, poetry is portable and it's free and it's unstoppable, and that's why I love it the most out of all the written arts. Poetry starts inside of your body, and I truly mean that. You take your pulse, you feel your heart beating, an iambic pentameter, ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. That's the very rhythm of our language. And as we make poems or songs or rap lyrics, you know, I have kids your age and they hate poetry, but they will talk for hours about a specific song. When they were in high school, they were very into Logic was one, or Kendrick Lamar was one. You know, they understood it and they talked about it. And guess what? That's a poem. That's a rich poet as opposed to most other poets. So you read what you like. You don't have to defend it. No one has to read the same poem and think the same things. There are poets that are revered, and I just dread teaching them in my class. And I'm not even going to say who they are because I don't want to be on. But if you were in my American Lit class, there would be a few poets that are, you know, the big ones that I would be like, yeah, and we would gloss over, and then I would take you to newer stuff, maybe another writer from Louisiana or who started in Louisiana, and we would go from there.
And then to piggyback off something you said, because I'm also doing this in the class, we started the class reading song lyrics. Because then they can go into poetry, and I'm like, what was the difference? What made you angry? You know, what makes you angry about poetry when you weren't angry reading that? So I think it's really interesting. Where do you weigh in on the idea of poetry of songs as literature in the big debate of Bob Dylan kind of made everyone upset when he won for Pulitzer, bless his heart. And then, yeah.
I don't like those debates. I don't like being a gatekeeper. I mean, I write poetry, and yes, I write some good poems and poems that I think are good, and then I also write poems that are just horrible, okay? But as much as the finished product itself, it's the act of doing it and participating in this big tradition of expressing ourselves through language. And the reason people love songs is because a song can say something to someone that maybe you can't say yourselves. Now, I know I'm a boomer, according to my children, and when I was your age, we used to have mixtapes. And for someone's birthday, they would make you a mixtape with songs, and they would go in a certain order, and it was referring to all these things. Now, you can do the same thing. You can make a playlist for someone, but the whole point is that connection to a group of songs and the language and music of those songs remind you of other times and things that you did together. That's all poems do as well. So if you are listening to words and they do that, then you're doing it right. And I mean, I don't mind. More than I don't mind. I enjoy rap music. I like it a lot. I think Megan Thee Stallion is the bomb, you know. And I mean, I don't write that way, but I'm glad that I exist in a place where I can write little poems about tattoos, and Megan Thee Stallion can do her stuff that she does. I mean, so I don't think we have to diminish. I do think there are people in the canon, whatever that is, that's kind of ever shifting, right? And you do need to be aware of this is where we started and this is where we ended up, but you know. And I'll tell you another secret trick. If I have a group and they're just like, oh, poetry's terrible, we just start reading sex poems. You know? And then, you know, I'll be like, you know what he's trying to do here. And they're like, oh, okay. And so then all of a sudden it's maybe a little more interesting. And I love the tradition of the boast in rap songs, you know, and people are like thumping their chest and saying, I did this and I did that. That goes way back in poetry. Yeah. So, anyway, I don't think you hate poetry.
Question back here.
Oh.
Here, we can move around.
We're going to come back. Okay.
Who do you write for? Like, when you write a poem, is it for yourself, is it for your audience, or is it for some other secret third thing?
I mean, I'm never thinking about an audience when I write. But I'm also not just filling up a notebook like, I mean, I think some people use poetry as a personal thing. And I mean, I've certainly done that in my life as a younger person. But I think of it as an artifact, I think. However, the favorite part for me is always the making. When you kind of fall out of time and it's just so fun and you think everything's so great. It may not be when you look at it the next day, but in the moment it feels amazing. And that's my favorite. Does that happen? Okay. I'm gonna come back here and then move to you.
So I guess when we're speaking about how we're making poetry, is there really a right way to write poetry, or is it just what we think and whatever emotional connection we make with that?
Yeah, there's no right way to do it, and not only is there not a right or wrong way to do it, it's going to be different every time. And you other poets in here correct me. I mean, just because I do something one time and it worked with a poem that I was happy with, I can't do that every single time. It's like starting over. You know, what's a poem? How does this work? This is stupid. A sonnet. Wait, what? I mean, it just, I don't know. But part of that play and the unpredictability of it, I think, is good. If you knew exactly what you were going to do before you sat down to do it, that's not a poem. That's more like a math problem or a recipe or something. It's different. There's no invention in it. And that's what makes poetry exciting. And you hear, I mean, if you listen to music, you hear musicians talking back and forth to each other in songs and styles and lyrics. Poets do the same thing. They are in conversation with one another across centuries. You know, it's a fun club to be in. Oh,
Yes,
I'm sorry.
So you mentioned that poetry is like art and it's like form of expression. I have this argument with my friends and some people online to like to ask, is all forms of poetry inherently political or is it all just expression?
I don't think that all poems are political generally. However, I would say that in some cases, the very act of certain people or certain groups writing a poem is political because it's done as an act of defiance or in spite of certain conditions. Does that make sense?
So, because like you used an example,
I don't remember what I said. What was my?
here. Because I guess what he was saying, not all form of expression is inherently political.
That poems are inherently political, or that they are or they are not.
My argument is saying not all poems, it's not all expression is political. It's just a form of expression.
It is, yeah, so I stand by what I said. I do not think all poems are political, they're expression. But sometimes just expressing your desire to exist, or even the things you find joy in, that also can be political sometimes to people. I mean, I don't, you know, so it depends on where you are in history, who you are, what your interests are, what you have to say, you know. So I guess it depends, but I don't think every poem is political, but a lot of times the act of writing a poem can be. Yes?
So you're the Louisiana Poet Laureate, and clearly your poems are not only located in, influenced by, but I think live in Louisiana, and particularly in the New Orleans, southern Louisiana area. Can you talk about how you make that place a character in your writing? And I think sometimes, especially when we read confessional poems by younger authors, you seem to be like the I is the only character, right? But I feel like in your poems, like the place is also there. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about place in your poetry and place in poetry in general.
I think, for me, the place is important. I am in the place that I want to be, and that's the place I want to write. You know, I don't know be a place poet if I lived somewhere else. One of the poems I read tonight, even in Gretna, hearing the cashier talk, I want for Gretna, that's a poem where place and voice connect together. And one of the things I love about this place is the beauty of the voices. The people drawing and talking and calling me baby. Like, I don't get mad. I don't think that's talking down to me. I think that is hospitality, and I love hearing it come out of people's mouths. And I think, speaking of political point, what you say, it seems to be popular to bash on certain regions of the country, specifically this region. It's bashed a lot. And I don't like that. I feel like I can bash sometimes because I live here, but I also have a lot of uplifting to do as well. And so it's a complicated place. I guess I have a complicated relationship with it, and I like to explore that. When I was first named Poet Laureate, I have to say it was very frightening because I felt I couldn't just write what I wanted to write. I thought, well, what do I have to write? What do I have to be, you know? And then I decided, oh duh, I'm just gonna be what I am and not worry about it. So, I don't know if I answered your question.
I mean, there just has to be an answer, right? Yeah.
Yes?
So do you think your cultural experience has influenced you in your writing?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Do I think about what experience?
Do you think your cultural experience with being Cajun influences your writing in some way?
I think it influenced in the sense of the family relationships and things and the people I grew up around and where I grew up. So yeah, I would say that.
Questions?
Were there major moments in your life that inspired you to become a writer?
No, I mean, it wasn't like I got hit on the head by anything. It was I had always written little stories and notebooks. And then I didn't write poems really seriously until I got to college. And I didn't know what I was doing, and I got no positive feedback. I had a professor that terrified me. And even though I was afraid, I kept doing it. And anyway, that professor who scared me so much gave me a book. And I think a lot of stories like mine turn on that detail. It's someone giving you a book. And the book that he gave to me was Making Bread at Midnight by Cheryl St. Germain, a Louisiana poet. So he gave me her book. He probably just was trying to get it off his desk. I don't know. Because she was a student of his. But I read in that book, and I read her writing about Kenner and New Orleans and places that I knew and hard subjects too. And I thought, oh, this is allowed? This is allowed. I'm good. So that book was really important to me. And I was lucky to go on to be friends with Cheryl. And he knows. He knows he scares me to death.
Well, thank you so much again.